Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
And Eric V. It throws you off every time.
I hate that
It throws you off every single time. It's amazing. It's actually, but we're talking kind of like succinctly now, but for that split second, it messes you up.
I hate you. Today we are joined by our lovely guest, Devin. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, where are you from, Devin?
I live in Massachusetts.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What part of Massachusetts?
Well, I grew up in Plymouth, America's hometown, but right now we bought a house a few years ago, about 7 years ago, in Fall River. Not too many people know about Fall River, but it's where the battleships are and all kinds of fun history.
Yeah. So when were you first introduced to recovery?
That's kind of a loaded question. I've always heard about sobriety, but then I never wanted to be sober. So I've heard about it, but I never wanted to be it. And then I did think about it seriously for quite a few years, probably starting in 2014 maybe. It was a serious thought, but it was not a reality at all. And so then I definitely didn't. It was a couple of years before, it actually happened.
And how long have you been sober?
I've been sober since November 17th, 2016.
Awesome. I'm right around the same time. I'm November 26th, but I'm a few years ahead of you. I'm 2012.
Fun. That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. And congratulations to you as well. And with all that out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to you to share your story with us. So take it away.
So my story, it's hard when people ask me to tell my story and how I got sober and all this stuff because, my whole life, I never thought I had a problem. So in my house, I grew up with, my parents, they both were divorced and then remarried. So I was in going to my dad's house on weekends and living at home. And so I had two separate lives pretty much. And, different friends, different things, just everything was different birthday parties, everything. And both my parents were drinkers. Again, not categorized as alcoholics or any kind of problem with it. It was just like a normal thing to do, to have beer in the house and occasionally have shots. And, it's just, it wasn't a thing, and everybody in the family, pretty much everybody had their own form of mental illness, whether it be like depression or anxiety or bipolar or, so many different things. And so that wasn't, something different for us. We all were used to it. It was a joke almost like, oh, she's a little crazy today, so in my family, it wasn't like, we talked about everything and nothing was, there was no issues with anything. Nobody had any problems and everybody thought everybody was just fine. But obviously we did have, a lot of alcoholics in the family and nobody ever talked about getting sober. So I never even thought of those kind of things. And so my childhood was normal. Everything was pretty normal about that, just regular kid stuff. Nothing crazy. And then as I got into my teenage years, I seemed to be a little, I don't know, I guess I kind of bounced between cliques and, I had friends in all different cliques, but I never really fit in with anybody. So it's like whatever anybody else was doing, I did to fit in with them. So if that was to do drugs at a party, that was it, and, there was no limit to what the drugs were. At around 14, I had my first drink at 14 and everybody was drinking. So I was like, cool, I fit in with these kids because now I'm drinking. And
do you remember what your first drink was?
Yes, it was, it wasn't Jack and Coke, but it was like Jack in a Pepsi bottle outside of a movie theater in near the trash barrels. We all filled up our bottles and went into the movie with them. And I remember that night because it was like, I knew I was doing something bad, but at the same time, the more I drank, the more I forgot how bad it was. And I didn't even think about what happened when my parents picked me up, And So like, and that night I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get caught, so to say. And so I was like, oh, I got away with it. So it just kept happening. So, Plymouth isn't, it's not a big city. There's not too much to do. There's bonfires and there's cranberry bogs and a lot of parties, so.
Oh, yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah. So being a teenager, it was, it was just a thing you did. And I don't really think anybody was doing it, as an addiction. Everybody was just, we would just binge drinking and having fun. So that went on for, a couple of years and, mixed in with the drugs. The drugs was, again, it was just like a Friday night kind of thing or a Saturday thing. And, but whenever I did something, I always did it to the extreme. Like I definitely binged it. I never knew when to stop. I was like, let's just keep giving it to me. And I just wanted to keep chasing that feeling. And, obviously that, led into more, as the years went on. And then I ended up getting pregnant when I was 18. And so once that happened, like something in my head clicked, like, oh, you can't do this stuff anymore. And so I had, my entire pregnancy, I didn't do drugs or drink. So that was, just 9 months of, well, it's really 10 months, but, no drinking, no drugs. I still had all those friends though. And so then once the baby was born, my son, I was still young and everybody was partying. Nobody had kids. So on the weekends or when I wasn't working, I just went back to drinking. And it was a little bit different. I didn't do it as bingy, I guess you could say, because I had to go home to my son. But I still definitely overindulged on it. And so like, again, this was only now drinking. I no longer did drugs. And I think in the back of my brain was like, drugs are bad. You can't be a mom and do drugs. But what's stopping you from drinking? It's a legal thing. I wasn't old enough to drink, but obviously, that never stopped me when I was 14. So it didn't stop me then. And then, things changed. I ended up finding, another man, I guess you could say, and we decided to start a family, and I had my second son. And again, that was another time where I just wasn't, I didn't drink because I was pregnant. And then once I had him, I really didn't drink that much. Their father, he was a drinker himself, and he had, his own, whatever he had. And I just felt like as a mother, I couldn't enjoy the drinking, and I couldn't, have fun anymore because I needed to be the responsible one as the mother. Like that was my job, and I took it very seriously. And I ended up getting like a really good job because I went, all this whole time I was going back to college, like I was getting a degree and I was doing, working, and I ended up I do EEGs and EMGs and sleep studies. So it's in the medical field, which of course, most people in the medical field just do good because it's such a booming industry, so I jumped up the ladder pretty quick because, I really enjoyed it and I was good at it. And so with that is like more responsibility and all that stuff. So as the years went on, the kids were getting older, my ex was drinking more, which caused more stress, I feel like, to me, like my mental illness was starting to come up more. Pressures at work, like it just kind of all added up, and I was just drinking like a maniac. I started drinking, wine at night after work. I started drinking shots here and there. I was definitely binging on the weekends, like back in my, teenage days, like binge drinking. And I still never felt like I had a problem because I thought I was just a 24-year-old having fun, like who was I hurting? I was going to work every day, paying my bills, not drinking and driving. Like I was doing what I had to do. So I thought I was being cautious and being good. And, I really didn't think I had a problem. And
you were the functioning alcoholic?
Yes, very much so. So the problem was that one of my brothers, me and him were very, very close, best friends. And we were drinking buddies as well. So that was another thing that was kind of like our connection. We were siblings, but we were best friends, and we just enjoyed doing everything together. And, obviously we were very, very close, and he had mental illness as well. And his drinking really got to a bad point in his life where he would joke about things that I didn't think was funny. Doing drugs and, swerving off the road and killing himself. And, it just got really dark. And he ended up killing himself. And oh,
my God.
Yeah. So when he killed himself, it's like, there was a lot of controversy about it, too, because that night he had been drinking, he had been doing drugs. So it's like, did he mean to do it? All these thoughts that go in your mind, and it's like, I didn't have him to ask now, like, why did you do this? What happened? And I had no answers except for the alcohol, so that day I started drinking tequila from that day on every single day, and it was no longer, it wasn't like a weekend thing. Now it was every single day. And it was, a lot. It wasn't like a shot here and there. It was like 4 shots, So as it started happening, like my health started doing some funny things. I started having like belly problems, and I was getting, my mental illness was definitely, raring to go now, because now I'm just adding fuel to the fire. And no matter what any psychiatrist ever said, I didn't listen to them, because I thought I was just self-medicating with booze anyways. I thought that was the answer. And, obviously I knew better than everybody else, or so I thought. And, it just kept getting worse and worse as the time went on. But I couldn't see that, I just still thought I was doing what people do when they're hurting and mourning. I thought this is what people do when they have, abusive relationships. I thought this is what people do when, they're tired of their life. I didn't think there was a problem with that. I just thought that was how I coped, because that's all I knew. Nobody ever said there's other ways of coping with these kind of things.
Yeah.
And so at one point, though, my parents, who were both nurses, even though they were still, drinkers, I didn't live in the home, so I don't know how much they drank, but they decided to sit me down for, like an intervention. And and at the time, I just thought that was so ridiculous, because they were both drinkers, and how could they do an intervention on me? Like, who does that? That's so hypocritical. And and at that point, I think that actually caused me to drink more, because I almost, in my mind, I thought, like, well, I'm going to drink as much as I want and show them all that I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about. And and so it just kept going and going. Now, this has been, at this point now, I'm probably 26. My kids are, like 8 and 6. I ended up leaving their father. I got my own house. And when I did that, that was like, don't hold me back now. Like, just give me all the booze in the world, because nobody is watching me. Nobody is telling me what to do. I'm the boss of my house, and I can put the booze in any room I want. I wanted to have booze up in my bedroom or in the bathroom, as long as, I put it up high so the kids couldn't get it. But I had all these little hiding spots for it just in case I needed it,
Yeah.
And again, the health problems kept coming and kept coming. And then, and they were always the same thing. It was always like a stomach-related issue, like always. And so the doctors, would do testing and say, it's just irritable bowel syndrome. And, and I obviously never told them how much I drank. So they never attributed the alcohol to it. They just thought there's something wrong with me. I'm a young lady and there's something wrong with me, and they were trying to get to the bottom of it, but I wasn't telling them the whole truth of everything. And so I ended up, I met a man and fell in love, and we got married and bought another house. And now, of course, buying a new house, getting a mortgage and all the, all the bills, that, it was like the stress just came right back again. And so I wasn't dealing with being a single parent anymore, but I still had that same job, which at this point now, I wasn't as good as I was before, because now I've been, calling out sick, and I've had to take time off for my appointments, for my medical issues. And, some things were, actual appointments, like for my kids and stuff. Being a single mom, you do have to take time off for work. So some of that stuff was actually, normal things, but a lot of it was because I was, hungover, or it was a snowstorm, and I was like, shit, I'm drinking tonight, and then I'd be like, oh, I can't go to work the next day now, so it was poor decisions on my part. And again, I don't really think I thought I had a problem. I really just thought this is what you do. And then, like, I started gaining weight, and like stupid things like, Beachbody or something, would say, you need to stop drinking if you want to lose the weight. And I'd make a choice to keep drinking and not lose the weight. So whatever my health goals were went right out the window because I didn't care. I'd rather drink. So eventually I was fired for my job. And that was like, everything in my mind, everything has been built up, like those whole, however many years, 12 years or 13 years of me being, top of my game, and everybody looking up to me, and me having, all this management and doing more and more every year. And now all of a sudden I got fired. Like, that's so embarrassing. That's, it was like a shock to the system, and like my ego, definitely. It was just really hard, and I knew it was coming, but it was still hard, and so I started drinking way more now. So I started drinking at like 8 a.m. and until nighttime. And that lasted for about 3 weeks until my body decided to shut down completely. And I ended up going into multi-organ failure.
Whoa.
And then after the multi-organ failure, it took like a week. And thankfully, because I was young, I was about 33 years old, I stayed in the hospital for a week. My organs bounced back like 100%. And so they sent me home, and that was amazing. And, in my mind, I didn't drink at this point. I was a week sober, but I was thinking about how I could start drinking again, like what my kind of like my schedule of drinking. Like, I was just going to slow it down. Like, I was thinking of how I would do this. And then before I could think about it anymore, I ended up passing out, and I couldn't get up. And so I went back to the hospital, and they found that I was paralyzed on my entire left side of my body, from my brain all the way to my toes. And they, this was, So it was 2 months in the hospital of me paralyzed, like laying in the bed with nurses, 24-hour care. Doctors had no idea what was going on. Everybody just kept saying chronic alcoholism. And I kept saying, because I worked in neurology, I knew about this stuff. I'm like, this isn't chronic alcoholism. There was something more than this. And it was a lot of testing and a lot of, no good prognosis. There was no prognosis. They were trying to keep me from not choking on my food and trying to keep me elevated so I wouldn't, throw up, or, my lungs weren't working to full capacity. It was a very scary time. And at that point, I was still sober. So I'm thinking in my head, like, how can I be sober and all this shit be happening to me? Like, that's not fair. Like, all my life, I've never wanted to be sober. And then the last couple of years, I thought about it, but I was afraid to. And now that I'm actually sober, nothing's going the way it's supposed to go. Like, I thought, like, in my head, because I have all this time now, I'm laying in a hospital bed, like, with nobody to talk to. My kids are at home with their father, and, and I'm in a hospital an hour and a half away from my house. I have my parents and my husband did come visit, but like at nighttime, you're all alone for hours, just contemplating everything you did. And it was so awful. And I had nothing. I thought I was going to die like that. And it was just such an eye opener, because that I did it to myself, like nobody did that to me. Nobody, I didn't get hit by a car, like I did it to myself 100% by giving myself alcohol. So they ended up finding a lesion on my brainstem. And that was the reason why it was all one side of my body that was affected versus, both sides. And so I ended up going through some treatments, and they reduced the swelling of the lesion, and it lifted off enough that I was able to start moving my arm again, moving my leg again. I was able to talk again, because this whole time I couldn't even talk. I couldn't speak any words, And so that was really hard, because now I know I'm not dead, but someone's taking care of me, and all, it was just it was so hard being a wife and a mother in a hospital, having no control over my life. And
was the lesion on your brainstem, was that like due to like excessive drinking?
No. So the lesion on the brainstem is actually called CPM, central pontine myelinosis. It formed because of the sodium that they gave me when I was in the multi-organ failure. So there's like a certain level of sodium that's supposed to give every certain hours or whatever, and they gave too much, and I didn't have enough water in my system, so it was like an osmosis effect, and so like it just started growing like a calcification slowly, and that's why that time period nobody, they couldn't find anything, they couldn't see it until it was a big sucker just sitting there. And so they, I did all the rehab and the recovery. It took me, and that's the wacky part, is that while I was in the hospital, like I prayed to God, and I'm not religious. Like I'm not religious at all. Like I've never in my lifetime never gone to church. I've never been a religious person. I knew about religion, but I wasn't religious. Yeah. And I prayed to God, and I asked him. I said, please just keep me healthy for my kids and keep me alive, and I'll do anything. Like I didn't care. Like I will just I'll go to India. I'll go anywhere and I'll help people. Like I didn't even care. As long as I was alive, I would do anything. And I promised to never drink again. And so that was a big thing too, because I didn't know how to live without drinking. Like what was going to happen if I got to go home? What would I do? And so I ended up recovering physically in the rehab, and I didn't have any kind of alcohol intervention. I didn't have any kind of therapy. It was just pretty much focusing on my physical recovery at that point. So they just sent me home, and they sent me home in a wheelchair, and I was just expected to, do everything else from that point on. It was pretty, nobody said like, you have to go to AA, you have to do this. Like it was just left up to me to do whatever I wanted. And I thought about it. I did think about it. I thought, I really could just start drinking again, and I could just end my life, and I won't be in a wheelchair, and I won't be this miserable person that people have to help, and all the different feelings that I had, just like low self-esteem. Like, why does my husband want to be with somebody in a wheelchair? Why does my kids, they don't want that either. And again, I got to another turning point where I finally woke up and I said, no, this isn't how it's going to be. Like, I'm going to be the best I can be. Like, God gave me a second chance for whatever reason. I'm going to do it. And so I just, at that point, I went to an AA meeting at my 6 months now. So at 6 months, I was actually back to walking. I was with a walker, but I was walking with my own feet, my own legs. And it was, definitely an amazing feeling. And so I went to AA thinking this is, I'm going to take care of my recovery. I'm going to get, make sure my sobriety is really on point, because, I can't mess up again, and so I went to the AA meeting with such high hopes. And when I got there, I went with my dad, who's, like I said, my dad's a nurse. And so he was like, I'll take you. Let's go. We had like a dinner, and it was such a nice night. And the group itself, it was like a mixed group, one of those mixed groups where it was all different, like NA and AA and men and women. I mean, there was so many different people, and I just got overwhelmed, and I did not like it at all. And I said, I said, fuck this. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing AA. I'm 6 months sober, and screw all you. Like, I've already showed you I'm 6 months sober. So ha ha ha, And so that was it for, about another year. I physically worked on myself, physically, mentally, there was a lot when I recovered with a lot of permanent disabilities, like neuropathy. My depression got worse. My bipolar got worse. My anxiety got worse. I now had high blood pressure. I was on like 10 different pills every day to combat all the issues I was on. And of course, that comes with all the side effects. And so, like, I wasn't, even though I was sober, I was still having a hard time, because I was like, I wasn't able to think clearly. I wasn't able to, like, put my thoughts to my words and express myself. And it was very upsetting. And it was, adding to all that depression. And it was just, I knew I had to figure out something else. I knew I couldn't live physically. I couldn't live feeling like that because the neuropathy was so awful. And, it's just, neuropathy is an awful, awful disease to have. And I knew I couldn't live like that the rest of my life. But I also knew I couldn't kill myself, so I was asking, what do I do? And so I just buckled down and I got off all the medication and I did one by one and I started taking supplements and natural like CBD oil without THC, just the CBD itself from the hemp plant. And then I would take, joint supplements and B12s and all the different kinds of vitamins so I could like really perk up my body. And I was able to get off all the meds. And that was such a big thing because now I was able to think more clearly and I was able to like actually put some like goals onto paper in my head and then follow through with it because now I just had this like, I was able to do more things physically too. So that helped. And and it was another turning point. And at that point I was like a year sober. And so, there was a lot of thought that like, what if I get so healthy physically because now I'm doing everything holistically. I changed my diet, I'm doing like physical stuff, and I felt really good. I still had all my issues, but nowhere close to what it was before. So I thought to myself, what if I get so healthy that I forget about all that pain? I forget about being paralyzed. I forget about all that depression. I forget about all that. Like, what happens if that happens? And then I'm like, so comfortable that I just start drinking again. Or, maybe because I use CBD oil, I think let's go smoke some weed. Or, like I was thinking how it could progress if I didn't figure something else out. So I started actually more for my mental illness than for my sobriety at this point. I started practicing mindfulness, meditating and reading from every single person who ever spoke about mindfulness and, practicing mindfulness on an hourly basis and to incorporating it into my daily basis and to pretty much living my entire life through mindfulness. And I'm not going to say, like, I hand out flowers to people and say, like, I don't do that. I definitely still have road rage. And, I call people motherfuckers on the highway, and I definitely speed up and cut them off.
Well, you're from Massachusetts. That's a given. You got... I know. Yeah, my sister went to college up in Boston, so I know all about mass holes.
And it wasn't... so it didn't change me as a person, but it changed the way I was responding to life. And that was a big deal. So I no longer was lashing out, emotionally and getting upset when somebody brought up my history or somebody said like, how'd this happen? Because my face was paralyzed. So now I think I look pretty symmetrical, but there are some things, and if I stumble, there are things that are noticeable that people would say like, oh, well, why did that happen? And then I would tell the story, and instead of being proud of myself of what, how far I came and everything I overcame, I would feel embarrassed and, afraid to tell my story because, it is sad when you think about it. But at the same time, like, I couldn't see how powerful it was. I couldn't see how strong I was because I was letting other things get in the way. I was letting my ego get to me. I was letting everything, and so that mindfulness really turned things around where I realized how strong I was. I realized what a amazing recovery that was. And like, that never happened. Like, people, that doesn't happen, like, I've never ever heard of anybody getting what I have to the severity that I have. And and so it was, that helped me mentally, the mindfulness. But what I noticed was it made my sobriety, because I hadn't relapsed yet, but I had those nagging thoughts that it could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I I did have those, awful drinking nightmares that people get. And I always thought maybe that's a premonition. Maybe it's, it's because my brain really wants me to go back to drinking and I'm going to be so, weak that I'm just going to do it, and just little things like, making a big dinner and a memory of me, taking a shot while I was waiting for something to boil, like just something like that, those things all seem to, I don't want to say vanish, but they just came at like a lesser degree now that I have mindfulness. And so I started thinking, I'm like, this has got to be really good for people in sobriety. So of course, I started looking it up and I was like, oh my God, this is like a way to recover. Like this is what people do to recover. Because I was let down that I didn't like AA. Like I thought there was something wrong with me. I was like, why can't I like AA? Like this is going to be my pitfall that I can't do this. And then finding out that like there are so many other paths of recovery, not just AA, I was like, it gave me like a newfound hope, like I can do this. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can do this. And, so that was another turning point, so it's like, and I'm sure, everybody has their own story of recovery and everything. And I know it hits people at different times, all the different points, but like, it was like, every year I have grown so much in my recovery that like, it just keeps happening, like, so then, once I learned how mindfulness could be so helpful in my recovery, I thought like because I am such a loud person and I am such a vocal person. And now I wasn't hiding my story. I no longer was afraid to tell the whole story, the dirty parts, the nasty parts, the embarrassing parts. I just told it all, because I thought of what if another mother was suffering silently and didn't know where to turn and didn't know, and she ended up just like me because she never knew that there was hope, So at that point I realized like, and I know I've heard it from people in AA that like, to do commitments and to, help others that are struggling. And so I was like, well, I can do that because all my life I've worked in the medical field and I've always been somebody who loves to help people to begin with. So now why not use my knowledge? Why not use my story to help others? Like why not? It feels selfish if I didn't do it, So
absolutely.
So I ended up, I'm a thinker. I really like to think. And when I was sick, those months that I was sick, like I said, I couldn't do anything but think. And so I had all these thoughts in my head. And once I was able to start writing, I started writing. And my writing completely changed, where I've never been like a poet or a storyteller. I've never been like that on paper ever in my life. But now, because I had all those thoughts stuck up there for so long, now when I write, it seems like it makes sense. I can voice my emotions and I can explain something with like just words that like I can't even tell you. Like I can't. The way the things I can think, I can't get it out of my mouth fast enough to explain it to somebody. So I write it. And then I'm amazed myself sometimes. I'm like, oh, did I say that? Oh, my goodness. So I came up with, I did a lot of research on the mindfulness, and I came up with, like, a whole, like, curriculum. Like, while I was doing all this mindfulness, I ended up taking so many courses online, and, so that way I actually knew the information, not just thought of it. I was getting the information from teachers and professors and scholars, and it was so interesting to me, like the way that my old medical field, the EEG and EMG, how interesting it was and how I grasped it. I did the same thing with mindfulness. It was like everything. I wanted to learn everything. I wanted to teach everything. And so I made this curriculum, and I had this, I don't even know why I made it. I just made a curriculum for sobriety, like what I would teach people if I ever, had a group of my own. And then, and then I went to another AA meeting just to try it again. And again, there was something about it. I left there caring more about the people and if they were eating, if their clothes were being washed. I cared more about their hygiene and their health than their actual sobriety, just because that's just how I am. I care about people, but for whatever reason, I just didn't feel comfortable sharing my story at the meeting. It was just, I don't know, and for me to be so vocal and to be shut down like that, it was hard for me. And so there was just another opening, like maybe AA isn't for you, Devin. Go to what makes you feel good. And so I went to a mom's group. One of my friends, she said, I have a friend who has a group in Plymouth. Why don't you go to it? And so I went to it. It was Recovering Moms Helping Moms. And so it's just a peer-led group of two mothers who went through recovery, and they just started their own group because they had a lot of friends who were in recovery, and they just wanted like a safe space, a place to all go and be able to talk about stuff and, with just mothers, So for me, it sounded perfect because I'm like, this is great. And so I went there, and it was in Plymouth, which is, my old hometown. So that, to me was comforting, even if I didn't know the people. I knew they were all moms. I knew they were all women. And when I went to the group, I loved it so much. And I connected with it. But the problem was it was an hour drive. So with my physical issues, I just knew I wouldn't be able to do it in the winter. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it on days that I was stressed and my neuropathy was acting up. And that upset me. And so it wasn't a setback, so to say, but I was really upset because I found something that I thought could work. And now I realized I wouldn't be able to do it as much as I wanted to. They had it twice a week, and I wouldn't be able to do that. I could probably do it, once every other week or whatever. I just didn't, I knew I wouldn't be able to do it. And so I did go as often as I could. And then one time somebody said, why don't you just start a group near you? And I was like, I don't know. I've never started. Why would, I don't know. I'm not a recovery coach. I'm not a recovery, anything. I'm just in recovery. And so, somebody heard my story, and he said, well, I think I might have a place for you. And I'm like, okay. So a recovery center heard my story, and they said, well, why don't you come in and tell us your idea, and we'll see, if we like it. If we like it, we'll give you a room. And I was like, oh, okay. And they did. I went in with, my whole curriculum, the thing I made for nobody but myself. And and I wrote out a mission statement, and I don't even know. It was like, I just felt like it was something that I could do. Like, I was like, I could do this. And I went in there, and they loved it. They loved the idea of having, moms connecting with moms, to add in the mindfulness and, have a safe space for women to, I'm not saying we bitch about you guys all day, but, it's a nice, safe spot where we can talk about like our abusive relationships and like all the stuff that like led us to our own demise, and how we deal with those issues now in sobriety, which is completely different, like it's having a fight with my husband now is such a difference than having a fight with my husband when I was drinking, like it's just 100% different. Like now, now I have these emotions that I have to feel, and I have to understand them, and I can't, block them by going and taking a shot. It's like I have to deal with it right now, right here, 'cause there's no going away. I could go to sleep.
Absolutely.
But I'm just going to wake up with the same problem. So it's like now I'm, able to cope with those issues at the time that it's happening. So I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about that fight I had with somebody a week ago, because I just deal with it. I just deal with it now, get it out of the way, and say what needs to be said and get to the conclusion. And so like that's what we do in the group, and it's been, I think it's another turning point in my sobriety, because now like, even if I don't know, maybe I'm going to sound funny when I say this, but like, even if I wanted to drink right now, I know I can't. Physically, I know I can't, because I don't know what would happen to the lesion on my brainstem, because it's still there. I never had surgery because of its location, so it's still there. And I don't know what any kind of drug or liquor would do to it. Would it make it grow? I don't know. But I know I could never go back to being paralyzed again because that was a nightmare. And,
I can imagine.
But then I also think that now I have all these women who want to hear my story. You know, they want to hear what I did that day. They want to hear, you know, that my kid did something bad at school, got in trouble, and how I handled it. You know, so it's like I feel like if I was to start drinking again, I would hurt more people because I would show them that, like, you know, all the strength you have is nothing, you know, like, so it's like I have to, even though I'm sober 100% for myself, I still feel like there's some kind of, you know, little part of me that doesn't want to fail everybody else.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you mean.
So that's pretty much my
story. That's friggin' awesome. That's amazing. Before we start with the Q&A, when you said Fall River, Massachusetts, one thing came to mind, and I wasn't 100% sure, so I had to Google it. Fall River is where Lizzie Borden's from, correct?
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure. Do you know the rhyme? Can you say it in your best Massachusetts Boston accent?
I don't think I have a Boston accent. My husband says I do, but I don't think I do. But it's Lizzie Borden. Hold on. Now I'm forgetting it because now you put me on the spot.
I did put you on the spot.
Lizzie Borden gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw Lizzie Borden gave her father 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she went and gave her mother 41.
Yes,
or vice versa. But this is the thing that people don't know is none of those whacks are real. She gave her stepmom, I think, like 11 maybe, and like her dad 8. So it's like, it's kind of crazy when you think about that, because either way, I mean, my goodness.
That's still an exceptional amount of axe whacking.
That's what I was thinking. Like, my arms would, like, fall off my body if I had given somebody 41 whacks. Like, I don't know. That's a little...
Well, it was the 1800s. Women were more robust. They used to chop wood. Yeah. That's what they did. All right. So now to the real questions. That was the fun question. Okay. Eric, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, David.
Okay. All right. I'll go first. All right. You talked about, like, early in, like, your story, sort of kind of like, I don't know, like getting away with drinking, like that first night, drinking like the Jack and Pepsi or whatever at the movies, and then like not getting caught by your parents. And one thing that, like, I've always found is that the worst thing that can happen for an addict or an alcoholic is nothing. Like, so, like, no consequences, like you're not getting caught, you're not getting in trouble. So, like, do you also believe that the worst thing that can happen for an alcoholic or an addict is nothing and have no consequences?
In a way, I think so. I remember a time when I was a junior in high school, and we had planned this spring break to go to Florida. Mm-hmm. My mom, my grandma, and my best friend and myself. We were going to drive down to spring break. Even though I was only 16 at the time, my mother thought that was a good idea to bring me and my best friend to spring break in Panama City Beach.
Nice.
So that night, though, I was supposed to be home at like 11 o'clock to start the drive. And I went to a kegger, and I got so completely obliterated that I don't even know how I drove home. I don't even know if I did drive home. All I remember is crawling up the front yard and my mother being pissed. She was so mad. Her face, she was so mad. And I was, oh, man, I'm in trouble now. That's it. Like, I've gotten away with it. This is it. Like, I'm going to get in trouble. And she literally just had me go take a shower, and she said, just so you know, as soon as you sober up, you're driving and you're not sleeping. So instead of canceling the entire trip, which as a mother, I'm a mother of a teenager, I would have canceled that trip. As a mother, I would have said, oh, fuck no. you are going to bed, you are getting grounded, you are not going to Panama City Beach, you are grounded for your whole entire life. I don't know what I would do, but I know I wouldn't have let my drunk teenager daughter go on vacation to another drunk-filled vacation. You know? So I, at that point, I definitely, I knew I got away with it, and I knew I could keep getting away with it. And I had no consequences. And, you know, without consequences, how are you going to learn that you're doing something wrong?
Exactly. Love it. Perfect answer. What do you got, Eric?
All right. So I guess my question is, you know, first off, you talked about how you went to that first meeting, and I don't think I've ever been to a meeting like the meeting you described, where you have people from NA, you have people from AA, you got like this little like mixer going on where it's, you know, kind of a fellowship mixer.
No.
I wonder, huh?
Yeah.
You know, isn't that kind of, have you ever been to anything like that, David? I don't think I've been to anything like that.
No.
But I do like the idea.
I don't know the name of it.
Huh?
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I don't know the name of it, but I know, like, when you Google all the AA groups, there's different ones, you know, that, and I think one of them is like all something, like an all, not like an all recovery, because it didn't talk about anything other than the steps, so I'm not really sure. But I can get back to you guys on that, so if you want to look into that. But I know, at least in my area, because we do have a lot of addiction in my area, there are so many meetings. You know, there is a meeting for everything, and which is great. You know, it's great. But no, that meeting, like I said, it was definitely all age groups, and it was I felt very uncomfortable because you know, like I said, it was my first time there, and I was already sober, so it wasn't like I was 100% struggling. But if I was struggling, I don't know how I would feel about it. But the fact that 3 different women came up to me and wanted to be a sponsor, in my mind, like, I understand where they are now, you know, because I'm further along in my recovery and I understand it. But at the same time, I felt like almost bullied. Like, why are you know, like, I don't want to call you. You're a stranger. I don't even know who you are. Like, you didn't even say, like, I'm a grandma, I'm a mom. Like, you didn't even introduce yourself except for your name. Like, I don't know who you are from a hole in the wall. Why am I going to tell you my whole life story and what makes me tick? No thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I like the concept of a fellowship mixer. I just want to throw that out there.
Well,
you know?
Well, yeah, so that's another thing that, you know, because I don't work for this recovery center, although I forgot to add this in my story, is that they have been very proud of me and my group that I've been running, and so they offered me a scholarship for recovery coach.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, but because of all the issues that we're having with right now, with all the, you know, social distancing, it was canceled. But it will be, and I will be a sober coach at one point. But so the group that the recovery center, it's called, it's like it was originally Stepping Stone. That's like the name of the company. And so Stepping Stone has like some sober houses and some detoxes or whatever. You know, they have the whole system. And they had a group of guys who wanted to open a center up that was like a day clinic kind of thing, like a place for, you know, addicts to go that would have all kinds of meetings at all different times of the day. And they would focus on all different pathways of recovery. So what they actually have, they have AA group meetings, they have NA meetings, they have, you know, my meeting, which is a mom's meeting, they have a woman's meeting, but they also have an all recovery meeting. And that's pretty much kind of what that first sober group that I went to, that you know, it was, but that was for everybody. You know what I mean? Like the whole town, whoever wanted to go to it could go to it. So it was a very big, overwhelming meeting. But at the recovery center where I go, you know, it's more, you don't have to be a member. It's not like a said kind of thing, but it's a little bit of a smaller group of people, so it isn't so overwhelming. But it is called All Recovery. So I actually went to it today online, like a Zoom meeting kind of thing, and it's the only real rule is that you can't put down somebody else's method of recovery. So it doesn't matter if you want to talk about your steps, like if you want to say, I did this step and this helped me, or when I come on, I talk about how I meditate and this helped me. And, you know, you just say whatever helped you. And obviously, you guys know it's, you know, you'll find something that you connect with somebody else. So it's,
yes.
So I love the all recovery meeting because it does give you so many different stories and so many different ways of, you know, coping with things. And even if I don't do the steps, sometimes I hear something in someone's step work where I think, ooh, that's a good idea. Like, I might work on that. But I don't want to sit there and do all the steps, and I don't want to memorize, you know, prayers, you know, the serenity prayer that I have to say every time I go to the bathroom. You know, that's just my own thing, you know, and that's, but I have friends who they literally say the serenity prayer all day long. And that's amazing. If that's what keeps them, you know, if that's what keeps them going, then more power to you. And who am I to say not to do it, you know?
Yes.
I like that.
All right. All right. So you talked about, after you became a mom, like you couldn't really like see yourself going back to like any sort of drug use, but eventually the alcohol came back into the picture. So my question is, does the social acceptability of alcohol make it even harder to quit than drugs?
Yes, that is 100% given in my mind, at least. And I'm not saying let's just go through stores and just bash everything that has wine glasses on it. But it's this idea, like this media pushes out, or, you know, social media and like mommy's time out and, you know, oh, we're at a play date and all the kids are running around and having our glasses of wine. Like, wow, what? How is that? Whoever, like, even when I was drinking, I don't remember doing that. But at the same point, I did a lot of bad things. So I don't know. But I do know that now that I'm sober and looking at that situation, that is not a good idea to have a bunch of women drinking and then having to drive their kids home. You know, so many irresponsible. Yeah, it's, you know, and sometimes I see cute shirts, you know, like whatever they say, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's a cute shirt. But at the same time, it upsets me because, like, I went into a store looking for, like, a present for a person in sobriety, and it was like a pack of pencils, and the pencils were all pencils. They were for children, I'm sure. I don't know, because one of them said, go bother your father, wine time, you whine more than my wine, or something like that. Like every single thing had a reference to alcohol and children. And so like, because I am a mom, that hurt me. I was like, oh my God, like what, like who thinks of these things? Who thinks it's okay to have a, you know, these like mixing alcohol and children? Like it just boggles my mind. But the fact is, that's why I do feel like I had such a hard time at the beginning. When I did finally feel like I wanted to sober up, I felt like I couldn't, because it doesn't matter where I went. I would always be near it. You know, it doesn't matter if I was at Chuck E. Cheese with my kids. You could just go get a big thing of beer, you know, like it didn't matter where I was. Social, you know, alcohol in social situations is just so normal. And it's, you know, like it's like, the only time that it's not normal is when people are getting in car accidents and killing people. Like, so you have to wait till it's an extreme before you take notice of it. And I do feel like that is a big, big issue, especially with women. And I know men, because I'm not a man, I can't say for them. And I'm sure it is the same thing for men, you know, like football games and beer, and all the buddies together, and let's hang out after work today and get a few beers. And, you know, so I do think, you know, like my husband makes a joke, like, you know, they always say like, oh, stock up on your beer before the game. Like, imagine if there were commercials that said, stock up on your weed before the game, stock up on your heroin before you go on vacation. Like, what?
True.
Like, that doesn't happen. So why is it okay for liquor? You know, like, in liquor, causes, like if you want to break it down, like I'm not giving a go for anybody. I'm not saying like this is one, I'm picking one over the other, but like you could do one drug one time and overdose.
Yeah.
And drinking, though, you could just do small drinks all along, and it adds up to a full-blown addiction, Like, so it's like there's just such a wide range of, like, why it's acceptable and how it's, like, built into our brains, Like, when you think of a, 4th of July party, you think of beer and kegs and summer slosh in the pool, Like, you don't think of, just cake and ice cream. You think of just getting sloshed by some red, white, and blue vodka drink, So it's hard because there's so many things that people, they make that connection, and it's like all liquor. So when you're trying to get sober, it's like, how do I cut that connection? How do I stop that? Like, and that's hard. And I definitely, I know it's hard. And I give, so much credit to, anyone who is sober, because it's like you want to get sober and then you don't know where to turn because there's not,
the whole society is working against you.
Yeah. Because like, there's that saying that like when, if you don't want to have a drink at a party, if you say no thanks, the first question is, are you pregnant? What? No.
Oh, yeah.
Like, okay. And they're like, but why? But you don't want to drink? Like, why do I have to give you an answer just because I want to hydrate with some water and not liquor? Like, and it's sad when you're with your friends, and that's even as adults, that's how peer pressure happens, because they're like, come on, dude, one drink? You're really, you're going to turn into an alcoholic again with one drink? And I'm like, yep. Just wait. I will go from 0 to 100 and be bashing people in the head in a few hours. So, yeah, that is what will happen.
I'll turn into Lizzie Borden so fucking fast.
Where did that Boston accent come from?
It'll be a fucking wicked fucking night.
It's wicked pissa. My God.
It'll be a wicked pissa. All right, Eric, what you got?
I'm a little thrown here. All right.
Wait, hold up. Just 1 second, Eric. I gotta go park my car.
Abiyad. Don't forget. Abiyad.
All right. So, you kind of talked about something which some people would consider controversial. I've done it before though, so I understand why you would do it. You mentioned how you got off a bunch of medication. And you did like a self titrate from what it sounds like. Correct me if I'm wrong if you did it with medical assistance, but I guess you were describing having like mental health issues and going from being medicated to not being medicated. What changes have you noticed that you have to be conscious of? Because your brain is like, you have a different brain chemistry, right, than other people. So you have to like be more cognitive of what's kind of going on with your brain. Like I kind of have to think every once in a while, and sometimes I don't really pick up on it where I'm like, oh, that's not a normal way of thinking. Maybe something you gotta pick up on this, right? How do you go about managing your mental health in a way that you aren't being, like you don't have, I guess, I don't want to call it a crutch, but you don't have the chemical, the medication to chemically balance your brain. Like how do you manage that?
So that first, when I think I got off, well, you asked a couple questions. So the first one was I did not do it with the doctors. And I do not suggest that. I suggest everybody who wants to get off medication, I feel like they should at least do it with their doctors knowing about it. Only because there are withdrawals, and some of them are, you still need levels to be checked on certain things, like if it's a blood pressure thing or, whatever it is. you still need your levels to be checked. And I wouldn't ever want anybody to do that. If they have something like if you're having seizures and, those kind of things like, and I guess, again, it's everybody their own, however they feel, you are the boss of your body, and doctors are very smart. And sometimes, though, book smart doesn't always correlate with the human connection because the patients themselves know how they feel. And sometimes it's hard to explain it to a doctor, and they don't always think about the side effects affecting the person. They think about the actual disease, and they just want to make that person better. So, I definitely would check with a doctor before you get off any meds. And, you just have to monitor yourself. And I definitely did it way too fast. I know that because I had a lot of withdrawal. So I just kind of sat in my house for like 2 weeks, like every time I withdrew from a new medicine for like 2 weeks because the withdrawals are just awful because I was on like gabapentin, which is like they say, like getting off heroin, which I've never been on heroin. So I don't know, but I can just imagine it now because that was awful. I was like sick to my stomach for 2 weeks and it was awful. So anyways, going back to the other question. So when I did get off all the meds, I've been crazy my whole life. So to now be off the medicine and have nothing to I guess, calm me down, nothing to kind of put me at a level mood, nothing to calm me down when, people are coming at me with words, like instead of, I don't know, after getting off the meds, I did have a couple months where I was very like erratic, I was up and down. My bipolar was off the charts, and my depression. I mean, I was crying in the bathroom. And the thing I noticed, though, as the time kept going, it's like the more the time came, the less of the drug, because even though you're off the meds, it's still in your system for a while. And so it was like my body was fighting the remnants of the drug in my system, but also like fighting the bipolar. So it's like it was just such a wacky kind of combination. And that's when I like I said, I did the mindfulness because I heard it was a good behavioral, therapy. I heard it was, I thought about all the different things I could do if I didn't take medicine. Like, could I go into therapy? Should I do hypnosis? Should I do, like, there were so many ideas I was thinking of. But at the same time, I wanted to kind of stay away from the doctors because I felt like every time I went to therapy, they just wanted to give me more meds, and I wasn't having that. So once I started doing that practice in the mindfulness, it was almost like the medicine, the way that mindfulness works in my body. I mean, I'm still crazy. I can tell you, I'm 100% crazy. I say some things that I think after, and I go, "Ooh, shit! I don't think I should have said that." And people will walk away sometimes with a funny face, and I'm like, "Ooh, did I say that out loud?"
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? You can't change the past, So you just got to move on and just hope, So it was definitely rough, and I thank my family for putting up with it. And thankfully, I wasn't, at that time, I wasn't like out in the public. Like I wasn't like working full time. And I was working full time after I got better, when I got back to my feet again. And I was on all those meds. Like I was on my bipolar meds. I was on my anxiety meds. I was on my neuropathy meds. And it actually made me hard to function at work. So like, I think, getting off the meds for me was just, it was the only thing I could do because I know I was going to go crazy with the meds. So in my mind, I thought to myself, if I'm going to go crazy, I might as well just do it without the meds, and I wouldn't suggest that to everybody because there are, there are very, very serious conditions that, they do require some meds, or they require therapy and, a holistic lifestyle. Some people really do just need that doctor supervision because, if you're not a doctor, and thankfully, like I said, I grew up in a house full of nurses and I've been in the medical field for 16 years. So it's like, I'm not just, completely blind to all this. I do have a medical degree, and I am, very confident in my knowledge of, in medicine and the medical field and, all the different things. So I'm very happy with what I did, but anybody who ever asked me, I always say, like, please see a doctor, because it's just, you don't know, if you're not in the medical field, it's just, it's tough, because you don't know what's normal. You don't know if maybe that was, uncalled for. Maybe that was like, whatever you just did was a manic moment. You don't even know, because, you're just so lost. And, so I do advocate for people to go see a doctor if they need to. It's just when you know that the medicine isn't helping, or you think it's making you worse, it's your body. You have 100% right to say, I don't want to take that, and I want something else, or I want to do it a different way. And that's your own right, and I think taking control of that definitely helps in a way, because now you do have something you can control. And I think, like, mental illness, a lot of times, I know for me at least, when I'm not in control of something, it makes all the other things worse. If I'm not in control of the situation, my anxiety starts, my overthinking, and it's just like this snowball that keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so I know that's how I am already. So now that I have, this mindfulness, it's, instead of reacting emotionally or not understanding a situation, I'm able to take a breath and think about it, and I might look a little cuckoo because, someone's screaming at me and I'm just sitting there, like, taking deep breaths. But, while I'm taking those deep breaths, I'm thinking to myself, what is the logical thing right now? Is it logical to get in a fight with this person? Is it logical to cut this person off around a bend? Is it logical to flip out on my kid because of whatever, and I start thinking and having that breath, like having that moment to think. It's, at the beginning, like I said, it was very crazy, but the more and more I practiced it, it was like its own medication. It just became like a soft wave, going through, instead of this, like, rocky, running down a path filled with rocks. It was just such a soft feeling, and it was, definitely something I wasn't used to. So now when I felt it for the first time, I can tell you that too, that when I felt it for the first time, I actually thought to myself, I think somebody drugged me. I think somebody put something in my drink, because I felt so relaxed and so normal. And I was like, is this what everybody feels like? I don't understand this. What the heck? And it, and it didn't happen overnight. It definitely took time. I want to say the first year that I practiced mindfulness, it was probably within 3 months where I was, like, really feeling good. And then within that first year, it's like, I don't want to say I don't have a mental illness, but I also can say that if I was to, you could throw any situation at me, and I want to say that I think I would be able to handle it pretty well.
Oh.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does.
You had a lot of questions. So.
I did.
Yeah. Is it about that time, Eric?
It can be. Yes, it is that time, actually.
Okay. But before we get to that, I just want to have a little statement for you, Devin. I loved your story. I love the fact that because what Eric and I and Podcast Recovery is all about is we really preach individualized recovery and people finding what works for them, and not necessarily keeping to a closed-minded, dogmatic view or particular program or fellowship or anything like that, but really taking little bits and pieces from here and there and really fitting it to what they need and what truly makes them happy and works for them. And so, like, hearing that in your story, and that you really, like, built it from the bottom up and are just going to even greater lengths in, like, starting your own meetings and, like, working towards becoming a recovery coach yourself. I applaud you. And anybody who wants to talk shit or I don't know, criticize you, just let it go one in one ear and out the other, because what you're doing is awesome, and we're proud of you here at Podcast Recovery.
Thank you very much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Good. Absolutely. All right, Eric. Now, without further ado, it is time to go to the Twitter. See, it gets a laugh, Eric.
I guess. I mean, is that what you're going
Try
for,
the
though?
Boston accent.
It's my game show moment. What do we got from the Twitter?
So I'm going between. I have two that I like. I'm gonna go with this one. This is from Major.
You gotta pick one, Eric.
I am. This is from Major. I don't know if this is a simple question or if you guys want to make it more complicated. We'll see how it goes. But are you truly sober when you pick up and use an illicit drug other than alcohol, no matter how briefly?
Give an example. What do you mean? Like illicit drug as in like
say that
cocaine
you
or heroin?
say that you're a bit anxious and you take a Klonopin, but you're in AA and your problem was alcohol.
But is it prescribed by a doctor?
Well, I think for devil's advocate's sake, we'll say it's not prescribed.
We'll say it's not prescribed. Let's say that you took something that necessarily you wouldn't usually take, and it's not prescribed by a doctor.
It isn't quote unquote your drug of choice.
Who's going first? Me?
Yep, you're first, then David, and then myself.
Okay. Well, I can answer this very quickly, I think, with both ways. I think if you're an alcoholic and you were to pick up a drug just to, whatever, for your whatever thing, I do think that hinges on your sobriety. I think anything that puts you into a different state of consciousness or a different state of just any different state, whether that makes you, it's different. I do feel it's different if it was prescribed. If somebody says it's prescribed, that's 100% different. But if it's not made for you, if nobody knows you're taking it and it's not made for you and nobody, a doctor didn't put it in your regimen, I do think it hinges on your sobriety. Also, while we're on that topic, I do want to say this is my own thing. And I have gotten some flack from this from my friends, but I'm very serious about this. If my friends are heroin users or ex-cocaine users and they've gone through rehab and they are clean, I am 100% behind them, of course. And if they go to a bar and they get shit-faced drunk, I think that breaks sobriety. And I know a lot of people say, but drinking isn't my problem. It's just drugs. But the fact that they're doing something that, again, is altering their state, I think it breaks sobriety.
Yep. There's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have yous to this. I'd like to say, like, first and foremost, it depends on any particular individual's recovery, because there are people out there who believe that like in Chemical Dependence Anonymous, like they go so far as to include nicotine and caffeine in their sobriety as well. So exactly, and so according to that, those people, absolutely anything in that spectrum would be a relapse or a break of your clean time, sobriety, recovery, whatever. But there are other people out there, their recovery, like just person X was a heroin and crack user. That's what they need to truly recover from. Now, person X can manage to, he has 2 beers a night. he stops using heroin and crack and starts drinking 2 beers a night for the rest of his life, and his life gets better and he's happy and manageable and whatever. That's his form of recovery. So, and he never uses crack or heroin ever again, but he's drinking 2 beers. Would that necessarily be breaking his recovery or sobriety? I don't know. I'm not the judge of that. Only person X is. Me personally, the way I live my recovery, I grew up through NA, so I don't use mind or mood altering substances. I don't take prescriptions that aren't prescribed to me, and I don't drink or use drugs anymore. Period. So that's my recovery. So if I was to get, I don't know, I have a severe headache, so I take some codeine that's not prescribed to me. Yeah, for me personally, I think I would call that some form of like broken recovery, broken clean time, or a relapse. But it really depends on the individual. But ultimately, like it's what works for you. But don't be a hypocrite. Like people in a certain fellowship who then go to the marijuana maintenance plan. Like that's not cool.
Right.
That's not. Oh, I'm not drinking anymore, but you're smoking weed every day, bro. Like constantly. Yeah, but I'm not drinking anymore. Okay, all right. So don't be a hypocrite, but be true to yourself and do what works for you and improves your life and makes it better.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna get very language here.
Oh, you're gonna get languagey?
Yeah. But first, just to counter you a little bit, David, just because, it's fun.
Yeah.
I do, though, and I will preface by saying, it does not work for me. I've tried and I fail every time. Mm-hmm. But if it does work for you and moderation is something you can do, more power to you. Because I suck at it, but I believe that certain people, that we are all unique. And I do believe that it's possible, just it's not possible for me. And if it is possible for you, that's awesome. If it's not, that's awesome. Whatever works. Like, that's all that matters. If it works and your life is getting better, cool. But looking at the word sober, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. So one of the things I always get flack for sometimes on social media with when we post stuff is and it's very much it's like very much a fellowship thing with the term sober versus clean, and being truly sober. If we want to talk about sober relates to alcohol. Mm-hmm. It does not relate to other drugs. By just definition, it is solely based on alcohol.
I see what you mean.
So
by wordy. I know. I got
yeah, you get it now.
Yeah.
But I understand that other people include sobriety. I do not consider myself sober. I consider myself clean. And I will never consider myself.
That's the terminology you use.
Yes, that's the terminology. But I'm just saying, so when you pick up and use an illicit drug other than alcohol, no matter how briefly, are you still sober? It depends on how you define sober. If I so in my sponsorship family, one of the things that, my sponsor does is he'll work with people, based on where, he'll meet them where they are, not force people to meet, them where he, if they want to stop shooting heroin and they still want to smoke weed every day, cool. Let's call that sober for now. When you're ready to quit smoking weed, we can talk about it. But for right now, you've stopped shooting heroin. Let's start working steps. Let's keep moving. Let's not... I don't really care about the word as much as where,
the action.
The action. Are you improving? Because if you know that's a slip to you, you'll know it's a slip because it fucking, you feel it inside. But if it doesn't feel like a slip and it just feels like, and you know, it's just something that you're doing, I don't know, because I feel like there's a big difference. And it also depends a lot on where you're at, right? Because if you're at a place where you feel like, oh, I'm sober, then taking a drink or a drug, well, I guess a drug in this case, it's going to leave like a hole inside of you. But if you aren't sober, you know, and you just haven't, you know, it's going to be a different feeling. So I think there's a lot of pretense here that like needs to kind of be looked at.
Yeah. It's a lot of ins and outs, a lot of what have you. But yeah.
Well, I think that's what, when you said, you know, it's however you feel, it definitely is. It's a personal thing because there's nobody out there with a hammer just hammering down on people saying, you're not sober, you are sober. Like, there's nobody who does that. So
well, you'd be surprised.
But there shouldn't be because
yes,
there shouldn't be. You know, we can say what we think, but at the same time, it's just what we think about ourselves. But if I had, like I said, I get upset when my friends say it, but I'm not going to go to a bar and I'm not going to go into the bar and say, hey, you're not sober right now. You know, I wouldn't call them out for it because if that's what they're going to do, that's what they're going to do. So I actually had a friend who, when she got clean from heroin, they put her on all kinds of mood stabilizing meds to the point that she didn't feel sober. So she didn't count that, even though she was done with her heroin, she didn't count that as her clean time until she was off those mood stabilizing drugs. But at the same point, I was off my alcohol, and I count my last day. The last drink I had was on the 16th, and so I count the 17th as my clean day, my first sober day. And even though the doctors had me on gabapentin, like Lexapro, Ativan, and I wasn't, I don't believe I felt high. So in my mind, I was still sober because I wasn't making decisions based from the meds.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Absolutely.
My cognitive function wasn't 100% okay, but I wasn't making decisions from an altered state of consciousness. I wasn't, and so I do feel like that, however you feel, it's hard because, that I have a family member, I won't say who, but I have a family member who went through AA and he now drinks and he thinks he's still sober. Or he says he's still sober because for the past 10 years, he only has 1 to 2 drinks. Although those 1 to 2 drinks in combination with certain other people can lead to 6 drinks or 7 drinks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is he sober? Because now he just went over his threshold of a few drinks, and who knows how often that happens. But again, I'm not the boss of that person. But I wonder, I just don't, I got to live my own life and focus on my own recovery. But I do feel like there has to be some kind of, at least a definition. If you are going to get into words, there does have to be a definition of what constitutes it. Only because, like, if you're in a place, like a sober house, you have to fit a certain kind of criteria to live there, and that's when it does become very serious on what you constitute as sober or clean, like that is an important time then because your living arrangements are based on that, or, whether your insurance will cover it, like in passing drug tests and all that kind of stuff. And so I do see it from all the different points, but it's such a touchy subject, it's just one of those definitely controversial things that is it something worth getting in a fight with somebody or just letting them live their life?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we'd like to thank Devin for joining us this evening.
Woo! Yay!
You did a great job.
So,
absolutely.
Devin, where can our listeners find you?
A couple different places. I have all my social media is my full name. So, Devin F, and I'm on like everything. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, but I also have, if you are a struggling mom and you are looking to be part of, some kind of online group, we do have an online group for my group that I host, weekly. We have it online as well, and that's on Facebook, and that's Mindful Moms Recovery Group. So that you would just type that in, like in the search bar, and it would pull up, and it's a private group, and you have to answer questions. And so if I don't think, if I have a question, if you're, should be in that group, I'm going to ask it before I let somebody join it, just so it is a private place, where people can feel comfortable to voice, issues or ask questions. So that's Mindful Moms Recovery Group. And while we've been on this vacation, I guess, so to say, social distancing, not really, a lot of appointments have been canceled, and I've had a lot of time to get things going. I have actually been in contact with a couple of friends who are also on the same wavelength of me, I guess you could say. And so we've started a nonprofit organization called Mindful Moms, Inc. So it's a resource for women. It's, it's help if women don't know what to do. They don't know where to go, where to turn. They can message us. We're on mindfulmomsinc.org. And you can also get it if you were to look online. If you just typed in Mindful Moms Inc. on Facebook, it's there. And that's just really a resource for women. It's still in its infancy, and I hope it definitely grows. But hopefully it's going to continue to grow. But what we've already started doing before, the virus kind of put us on a standstill, we were traveling to rehabs and detoxes and sober houses and just telling our story. And all of us have very different stories, as you know, and they're all, very important stories. So right now it's really just for women. You don't have to be a mom to reach out to us. It's just called Mindful Moms because we are moms who are mindful. But it is, I do hope that people will utilize that, if they don't know where to turn or they have questions, or even if you're not local in my state, we'll work with other states trying to find a recovery center that can be helpful, recovery coaches, anything that pertains to recovery. It's just pretty much everything. So it could even be just that you're, you have depression and maybe you're not addicted to any kind of drug or alcohol, but you just need help. You need a support group. It's there for that too. So that's Mindful Moms Inc.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Mindful Moms Incorporate, mindfulmomsinc.org, and then that's just a resource center. But if you wanted to be part of the group itself and you are a mom, it's Mindful Moms Recovery Group.
Awesome. All right. Well, here at Podcast Recovery, we are aiming to expand the scope of support for recovering addicts. Accessibility and convenience of helpful services is paramount to combating addiction. We work to bring the message of recovery to every addict, wherever and whenever it is needed. We believe that a powerful voice of recovery should be obtainable, practical, and at the touch of a button. Every addict deserves to hear a message of hope, and Podcast Recovery is here to provide it. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Make sure you check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. For any questions, go to podcastrecovery.com. But most importantly, everybody out there, stay safe and stay clean.